and welcome to the Thursday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who I just found out has a $100 million surplus. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, and with that in mind, this is my final show. See you later.
You're going to be yachting away somewhere. Maybe to Monaco.
Maybe to Monaco.
Come watch Mbappe up close.
With their yachts and luxury casinos and Formula One Grand Prix.
Yeah, yes. It's quite the place.
For more on that, I'll listen to today's Goalmouth. That's where I knew that from.
It was Taylor this morning.
That was the description of Monaco from Wikipedia. Yeah.
There's also a great Star Wars joke in this morning's Goalmouth.
Yes,
I won't spoil it for anyone.
And I will say freely that I stole that from the internet. That was not from the depths of my own brain. I wrote that at about 1:30 in the morning. I wrote finalized everything at about 1:30 in the morning. There's no way my brain was capable of writing a good Star Wars pun at that late hour.
On today's show, later on we're going to do listener questions. We're going to talk about how to watch a game with a tactical eye. We're going to talk about where the US should host a World Cup playoff game if we had to do that, if we finish fourth in CONCACAF. We're also going to talk about the various benefits of finishing third in the Premier League versus winning the Europa League.
Yep.
A question close to your heart, maybe. Manchester United fan Taylor Rockwell.
Maybe. Yeah.
But first, we are going to talk about the US Under-17s. US Under-17s beat Honduras 3-0. 3-0 in the second round of the CONCACAF U17 group stage.
Yeah,
the classification stage, I believe it's called.
There it is, yes, which sounds very strange.
Yeah.
That sounds like a weird euphemism for like one of the teams will be euthanized if they don't make it through or something like that.
I hope that is not the case.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not, but it's just a weird.
They did sort of play like their lives depended on it, so who knows?
Yeah, it's also weird that so you had groups A, B, and C in the first round, and so in the classification stage it goes to groups D and E.
Is that
Again,
right?
On today's Goalmouth, that was not easy to explain quickly.
But here's how it was. The US is in a 3-team group. Get used to it for the 48-team World Cup in 2026. And they need to finish in the top 2 of that 3-team group to qualify for the U17 World Cup. It looks pretty certain that they did do that with the 3-0 win over Honduras, because Honduras also beat Cuba, I believe, 7-0 or 7-1.
7-1.
7-1, yeah. So Honduras can't get more than 3 points. Cuba currently have 0 points. US has 3 points and a good goal difference. So we're basically there.
Cuba, I believe I'm correct in saying, would have to beat the United States like 9-0.
On Friday.
Yes.
And that's unlikely, right? Yeah.
Yes. So that would be for the United States just to qualify, but for the United States to make the tournament final as well as qualify for the
tournament final.
Yes, exactly. They would need to finish top of the group, which means they need to get just 1 point.
Yep, 1 point would do it. 1 point would do it. Okay, so we talk about this Honduras game. This is a big win, right? Honduras have didn't they vanquish us first time round from the Olympic qualifying?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, the U23 CONCACAF tournament. I believe possibly 2 years in a row.
Lovely.
2 cycles in a row. But US got some measure of revenge with a 3-0 win. A really impressive performance. We didn't see all of it, right? We saw chunks. We basically watched the chunks around the goals. Goals came from Josh Sargent, that man again, from Ayo Akinyola, that man again, and from Josh Sargent, that man again.
Yes, and we had some good reports for both of those gentlemen as well as a couple more. Maybe we'll get to those in just a little bit. Where do you want to start with this one? Should we start with goal number 1?
Yeah, let's just go chronological. Yeah,
well, then that makes sense.
Josh Sargent's goal in the 26th minute. It's from a free kick, but it's from a free kick that he won. So I want to wind us back all the way to Josh Sargent winning this free kick.
So
there is no Honduran Manuel Neuer, it turns out.
Well, no, there's not. And I think we learned that. Well, we learned that the fun way. Honduras learned that the hard way, courtesy of Andrew Carlton. He plays that kind of lobbed ball over the top. Josh Sargent runs onto it. Honduran goalkeeper comes out to try to make a play on it.
Way out.
And makes a poor decision. Yeah.
And if you listen, if in your head, you haven't seen this, if in your head you're seeing him like this, the Honduran keeper, I believe his name is Venegas.
Carlos Banega.
Oh, sorry, Beneja. Okay, on the edge of his own area.
Yep.
You'd be wrong. He's like playing left back essentially by the time he gets to Josh Sargent to try to close him down.
He definitely has a weird approach to it. Like I think he was already too far off of his line, so then he's like kind of making this weird diagonal run towards the ball, but is obviously never going to get there. Then he. True to goalkeeper form, tries to foul Josh Sargent by grabbing him a bunch of times and then still gets beaten and then it's like, well, I'm just going to kick you.
Doesn't Sargent pull a step over and turn and go past him and then the keeper has to trip him?
Yes.
He looked like the world's worst and most pinkly dressed left back.
Yeah. Number 1, that's great. Number 2, it's also one of those situations where it feels like there needs to be something more than a yellow card.
Yeah, in my head I'm thinking, isn't that a goal scoring opportunity? Like the keeper's out?
Yeah, I think the difference is that by that point all the Honduran defenders had gotten back, so there were like between 2 and 4, which which I guess is 3 players kind of between Sargent and the goal. So it's not as though if he gets around the goalkeeper, he's in on goal. But that said, I mean, it is such a deliberate foul because the goalkeeper realizes, like, oh no, I'm beaten. He could easily score. I better do something. And the fact that it's like that persistent trying to grab him, Sargent continues to evade, and then eventually he just really does sweep the leg to concede the foul. Feels like it should be like a yellow and a blue card.
Well, okay, this is in the 25th minute, and ball don't lie, because in the 26th minute, ball's in the back of the net.
This is true.
So it's Andrew Carlton steps up, puts the free kick in, and weirdly, if you just watch this quickly, it looks like Josh Sargent is just unmarked, top of the 6-yard box to bang it home.
I believe the commentator, who, to be fair, is working alone, so has to fill some time. I believe his comment on it was like, doesn't do much, or like doesn't put in much effort. And I think that's a little discourteous to Josh Sargent.
Yeah, because what he actually does is he stands behind the keeper who's just tackled him, as if to prove he's not scared. But no, it's actually like it's a sneak attack, right? Well, he stands behind the keeper, hides behind the keeper. Then when the free kick comes in low from Andrew Carlton, Sargent just takes a few steps backwards and then suddenly appears as if by magic at the top of the 6-yard box.
When you say backwards, though, you mean like backwards towards his own goal, like to his right, basically. So he's facing that free kick coming in, and then he kind of steps out maybe 3 yards, and he's right there to tap it home. And I think, to your point about him standing behind the goalkeeper, I think that is especially intelligent, because the way it usually works is if you got that, like the attacking player standing in front of the goalkeeper, they're trying to kind of impede his movement, maybe his vision as well. And it almost always means you have to bring a defender onto that player because then you want to like kind of help shove him out of the way, but you also want to make sure that player is marked. But if you're just kind of passively standing behind the goalkeeper is going to sort of be like, all right, well, this guy's not doing anything. I know I'll beat him in the air, so I'm not really worried about it. People might not be as inclined to pick him up. And then if you do a quick little like half step out and Andrew Carlton is as good as Andrew Carlton is at delivering free kicks, suddenly you're up 1-0.
I liken it to maybe the Millennium Falcon hiding inside that asteroid or the moon. You know what I mean? Like you just hide for a little bit and then you can get out of trouble. I mean, you got to assume that you're not in the mouth of something.
I was trying to figure out what the mouth would be.
Spoiler alert, I guess.
I don't know.
It's a long time ago.
I think you're fine. I think you're fine on that one. It also doesn't spoil too much.
We did get a scouting report from Michael Hartman, scouting Josh Sargent, and he said that note to Honduras, you might want to keep a marker on the opposing team's top scorer on free kicks. Like really noting that I think even though he's hiding behind the keeper, Honduras should have done a better job. I agree with Michael that you should still just have someone mark Josh Sargent because he keeps scoring goals. You can't. Do they just assume, he's giving up on this one, I guess?
I mean, maybe they really do think he's just like, he's being passive, he's waiting for the ball to spill or something like that. And just because it does, the way Carlton delivers that ball, it is up and down. It goes just over the wall's head and then gets down. For Sargent to finish with his feet, you know? And so with that in mind, I think it is a little bit master set piece theater, if I were to give credit where credit is due.
To both of them? To Carlton and to Sargent?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, lovely stuff. Okay, second goal. Second goal comes from Ayo Akinyola. He keeps scoring as well, right? He's catching up with Sargent.
And you know what else keeps happening?
What's that?
Carlos Banega keeps coming off his line.
That does happen, doesn't it? Okay, I want to say I love this goal. It's in the second half, 65th minute. Don't listen to the US Soccer Report. They tell you it's in the 69th minute. It is not. It's in the 65th minute. I love it because even though it ends up with Akinyola beating the keeper, there's a lot of other stuff happens that involves sort of everybody on the US team doing what you imagine the person in their position should be doing. So I'll give you the example. Chris Durkin is playing central defensive midfield.
I'm with you now.
Big dude. It's a long ball from Honduras. Durkin wins it in the air and heads it down back towards the Honduran goal, right? Josh Sargent has his back to goal like a good old-fashioned centre-forward. And we talked about him having like all the skill set of a centre-forward and how I think he's going to play for Man City. He chests it. he gets that ball, chests it back into the path of Blaine Ferry, who does the very good midfielder's job of lifting it over the back of the defence. And then Ayo Akinyola does the very sort of attacking right-winger job of running onto that ball to score past Banega. Banega does the very bad Manuel Neuer job of coming off his line too fast again to give Akinyola an easy-ish chance to go around him.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a fool me once situation. It did seem like, again, he was sort of like, I'm going to get it this time, guys. There's no way I lose. I lost. And it's very good work from Akinyola, not just to tap the ball like past Banega, but then he tracks the ball down. He rides like a challenge from the defender and is able to finish from a tight angle. But I think it's also worth noting that we went back and watched because I think we both had this idea that it was Akinyola starts that run and then the ball is delivered. And in actuality, Ferry, I think, really spots that there's an opportunity behind it and that maybe Banega is inclined to come off of his line. And it's Akinyola reacting to that ball. Like, it's not much of a difference. It's maybe a half second between when that ball is played and
Ferry kind of leads him down there.
But again, I think that also speaks to Akinyola's ability ability to pick up on a situation and adapt accordingly and not be like if it were me up top and somebody played that ball in, I'd be like, maybe next time.
Well, we got a scouting report about Ayo Akinyola from Wes Kaufman about this goal as well. Wes says it was a great piece of work highlighting both his speed and skill and gave Ayo his 4th goal in the tournament so far. Not too shabby, Ayo Akinyola.
Not too shabby, but that still puts him behind Josh Sargent. Again, Michael sent us an email. Sargent now has 5 goals in qualifying, 2 behind Honduras striker Carlos Mejia for Golden Boot.
So Mejia won't be playing again, right? He's played his 2 games.
Right.
He's got all his goals. I think he has 7 total. So I think Michael's interested in the idea that Josh Sargent might finish top scorer.
Yeah.
Right? Makes sense. He says, next up, Cuba.
Yeah.
Expect more goals as Cuba, that's my pronunciation, gave up 7 against Honduras in their last game.
It's tough to say, and I know what that is about, right? Because usually the inclination here would be like, we're going to rest some players. We probably are through.
That's what I'm thinking. The US only needs to draw Cuba to make it to the championship game. The championship game will be on Sunday, right? So Cuba game is on Friday.
Yep.
Championship game's on Sunday. You got a big squad. I think we may see more like the El Salvador starting it. The team we sent up against El Salvador in the final group stage game. So Sargent may get a rest. And then if he's going to score those 2 goals to match Mejia, he's going to have to score them in the U17 CONCACAF final.
Yeah, I think
against
that makes
maybe
sense.
Mexico, maybe Costa Rica, depends who it is.
Because especially if you only need that draw against a Cuba team that really doesn't have much to lose, you kind of don't maybe want to risk it. So maybe, if anything, you'll see Sargent or Akinyola or both as second-half substitutes if the United States maybe wants to push it a little bit.
Maybe time enough to get a goal.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. Or maybe they start. Who knows these things? I don't know.
Well, anyway, in the 82nd minute, Sargent got another goal in this game. This is why he has 5. This is... I was going to say my favourite goal in this game. I'm not sure. I think the Akinyola is. This is a great finish from Sargent, from a great bit of skill from George Acosta.
I think that's why
I'm going to call Georgie Acosta in an affectionate way.
I think that's fair. Yeah. And I think I agree with your original sentiment, which I think this is my favorite goal of the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you describe it then, since you love it so much?
Sure. Well, so Acosta comes on, he's a second-half substitute, and it's a chipped ball like over the back line, but it's not like the first 2, which are kind of from distance. This one is maybe 25 yards from goal, and he pulls it back and then chips it over in kind of like one gesture.
Yeah, so he rolls the ball back towards him, like a drag back and then chip, and it's perfectly timed. Yeah, I'm not sure why he does the drag back. What's the point of the drag back? Is it to get it away from a Honduran defender?
I don't think so. I think there could be a couple things there. One, I think when you pull that ball back, it can be, if you're the defender, you can think like, oh, okay, he's reversing a little bit. He's getting it under control.
He's backing up.
There's no way he's just going to then play a ball in over the top. But I think it pulls the ball back and allows him to put that kind of backspin underneath it so he can chip it, but knows that then if the ball hits the ground, it's going to hold up
and not roll out,
go spinning,
not bounce out of bounds.
Especially since once again it was raining heavily, so that ball is going to skip usually.
Maybe you want the ball to hold up because you want Banega to come off his line.
Also, that's a decent potential. And then I can't remember if Sargent hits it first time or takes a touch. I think he takes a touch, but either way, it's still from a relatively tight angle, and it's still from 15 yards out or so.
But it's vicious, right?
It's
like right in the corner, bang.
Yeah. It is the type of finish you see from someone who is in form and confident, because he kind of backed himself. Because I do think if you've maybe missed it, if you're Gonzalo Higuain, maybe you hit that because you have the confidence in yourself. But if you've had that sort of like, oh, I messed up here, I made a mistake here, maybe you take an extra touch just to really try to make sure you put it on frame.
I'd say Higuain 2014 World Cup final, 2015 Copa America final, 2016 Copa America Centenario final. Doesn't hit that shot.
So basically just yesterday was the only time he pulled it off. I got you.
Yes, indeed.
I got you.
Final question from Michael, scouting Josh Sargent, is where will Josh go?
Yeah.
And we have on the chalkboard here, Taylor has quoted me as saying, Josh Sargent will supplant Gabriel Jesus at Manchester City.
No, just in 2 years' time.
In 2 years' time.
I don't even know what that means, really, because you didn't say it in terms of like he will go to Man City. You just said he will supplant Gabriel Jesus, which actually I think benefits you. It leaves it open to interpretation.
Because I've picked Josh Sargent as my TSS Scouting Network favourite, right? And I'm willing to change my favourite if something else amazing happens. But based on what we just saw, Josh Sargent banging 2 goals past Honduras, I'm sticking with him.
Right.
Gabriel Jesus was your favourite, right? So,
but
does this not change your mind today?
What do you mean?
Just seeing Sargent's goals. Are you not like, oh yeah, I'm excited about this kid?
I was always excited about him.
But more than Gabriel Jesus?
I mean, yeah, probably. But that's because Gabriel Jesus hasn't played. Like, when we last did this, it was sort of like, Gabriel Jesus had just played. Yeah. So, right. I mean, yeah, it's an evolving thing. I'm not a stick in the mud here. I'm not just trying to stay with it. That said, you can make a compelling argument for Andrew Carlton as well, which James Jones, who's scouting Andrew Carlton, did. He also pointed to the relationship that seems to have formed between Sargent and Andrew Carlton. He says, given how they've worked together in this tournament, I'm hoping that Sargent suddenly figures out that he's actually from Marietta or Alpharetta, Georgia, instead of Missouri.
Meaning that then he'd be a homegrown player for Atlanta.
Yes, because right now, as we've talked about before, Sargent, who is from St. Louis, which is in Kansas Sporting KC Discovery territory, so he is, I guess, technically...
If he was going to be a homegrown player in MLS, that's who he'd be with.
Yes. Yeah. So which is why it's always... When we do like the kind of quick description of, for example, Eo Akinyola, 17-year-old American forward for Toronto FC 2. Josh Sargent is usually like 17-year-old American forward for maybe Sporting KC? For question mark? It's a little bit confusing.
Shall we talk about Andrew Carlton then? Because, okay, so he's not the headline name because Sargent got 2 goals, but he did put in that really nice assist. And he made some highlight reels, right? Like, for example, James sent us a GIF that we also saw elsewhere on Twitter of Carlton dribbling through Honduran defenders as if they weren't even there.
Yes. Yeah. and it's interesting because if you watch the Twitter one, at least from maybe like a couple feet away, which is what I did.
Was it Rob Usry posted this for Dirty South Soccer?
Yes. I think he's destroying kids or something like that. It looks like he just kind of has a vicious cutback and sends the player the wrong way. It's a roulette. He does a little spin in there.
It's a Zidane.
Yeah.
Right? Zidane roulette.
So you have those moments of like on the ball skill. You have the ability to deliver a set piece, but it's just also it's those other little intangibles that we've seen from him at other points in this tournament where he will go at players obviously, but he'll play the ball simple when he needs to, but he'll also take players away and take defenders away, and then he celebrates like a teammate. So I very much enjoyed Andrew Carlton's tournament, even if he had a bad game against Jamaica. Again, as James noted, maybe that was just a blip.
Yeah, I think it was, right? Because he did do some damage in this game, including the opening assist.
Yes.
Okay. Also in this game, Jalen Lindsay, scouted by Scott Rowson. Scott didn't send us a match report for this one yet. He did send us for Jalen Lindsay's game against Mexico, where the US won 4-3. That's still kind of the highlight of the tournament so far. But he did note that we want to note that Scott's son has his final tryouts for the Sporting KC Under-14 Academy team coming up. So we want to wish good luck to son of Rowson.
Yes. TSS believes in you, son of Rowson.
Let us know how that goes. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll be
son of the son of Row. Yeah.
Maybe we're talking about Rowson like 3 years' time in the next U17 CONCACAF tournament.
Yeah, maybe he partners up with Josh Sargent. Who knows?
Well, hopefully Josh Sargent's moved on from U17s.
No, yeah, that could be. But I'm talking about Sporting KC.
I see.
Only 3 years apart.
All right, so again, the US plays Cuba on Friday in the final sort of classification group stage game. We're hoping they finish top of the group, and they will play, it looks like either Mexico or Costa Rica in the U17 CONCACAF final. That game is Sunday. Sunday night will be the U17 CONCACAF final. Fingers crossed the US is in it. And Sargent gets at least 2 more goals to finish joint top scorer.
I'd be all right with
3
that.
3 more goals makes him top scorer.
That would be better. Yeah. I have a question for you, Daryl Grove, before we move on.
Yeah.
And it's kind of putting you on the spot, so I apologize. But you have interviewed...
I live my life in the spot.
There we go. You've interviewed John Hackworth on this show before,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what you think happens for and with John Hackworth after this tournament, because it does seem like the United States is going to qualify for the U17 World Cup. It would make sense that he continues to coach them. But do you think the U.S. Soccer Federation will want to keep him in this role, given the success this team has had? Do you move him up a little bit? Do you maybe put him into a position where maybe because of
he sticks with the same team?
Well, yeah, I mean, that could be, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I read a story about this the other day. It's called looping. When you are a teacher who stays with your class, or you move up through the grades with them. I think he'll just keep coaching the U17s, the next generation, right? We just have a new class of kids next year.
I didn't even mean it in like the looping sense, but that is interesting. What I mean more so is like, I don't think that if, say when Bruce Arena calls it quits with the U.S. national team and they're looking for a new coach, I don't think the head coach of the U17 national team, regardless of the success, is a player who's going to be in contention.
A coach, you mean?
Excuse me, yes.
Yeah.
But
Philadelphia Union fans would have something to say.
Yeah, but I'm saying like if he then, say he went and like managed the U20s and got them to a World Cup and did really, really well, like do you continue to move John Hackworth up into more competitive areas, or do you think you stick with it knowing that maybe he's not going to be the name you're going to go with?
It depends. It depends what John Hackworth wants. It seems to me, my read is that like he specializes in coaching guys of this age. You know, 16 is a very specific age, right? You're kind of not quite yet grown up, but you're not a kid either. You're very in between. And it takes that's
a really good
certain
point.
Type of person to know how to handle that age group, and it seems that he's doing very well. So why not have him sort of coach the next generation?
That's a really good point, Daryl Grove. This is why you get paid the big bucks. Well done.
Do I?
Yes.
I thought we split everything 50-50.
Yeah, good point. Never mind that. But maybe.
Including your $100 million.
Well, I was going to say you can't have any of mine, but maybe you can have some of the U.S. Soccer Federation's.
Yes. So, story came out earlier this week that the U.S., because of the money that was made on Copa America Centenario, is an extra $46 million in U.S. coffers, which means they now have a $100 million surplus in the U.S. soccer budget. And a bit of a story leaked out. I think it was Grant Wall's story for Sports Illustrated was part of this, that they're looking at, sources at U.S. Soccer are saying they're looking at building a national training center or a national headquarters for the United States national teams.
Yes.
Which means we would have one big center where all the training camps happen, where the headquarters of US Soccer is, where everything happens.
Yeah.
Similar to Clairefontaine in France, which the facility is basically credited with creating that 98 World Cup winning national team. Thierry Henry, etc., came through there. England has just completed this a couple of years ago. They have St George's Park in Burton. They have a centralised thing. Both those countries smaller than the United States.
Yes.
It's a little easier to have a centralised.
Yeah.
So where would you put it in the US, for example?
I think American God style. You put it right in the middle of the country.
What's the name of that town in American Gods?
I mean, it doesn't actually exist because they have to do it somewhere else. I forget what the whole thing is.
Oh, that's not a real town.
I don't think so. I think the story is the actual center of the United States. That town was moved due to a flood or something. I don't know. Read American Gods and you'll know. I know you have. Saying to the listeners.
Okay.
And I haven't yet watched it. I hope it's good.
Right now they use the StubHub as a sort of de facto US center.
Yes.
Right? Do you remember there's all those Bruce Arena Facebook Live Q&As? He's basically at StubHub in his old office. Yeah. And every January we have training camp and we have friendlies. It all happens at the StubHub.
So I have, if you were to say, if Sunil Gulati called me and said, where do you think it should be? Man who has no idea of these things and only has a superficial understanding of what's necessary, my answer would be Atlanta, Georgia.
Why so?
Or on the outskirts of Atlanta.
Why is that?
Okay, because we're talking centralized location in the United States, but really, if you think about where the players are coming from, you've got some players on the West Coast, obviously, you've got some on the East Coast, but then you've got players coming from Europe and continental Europe as well as England and Scotland. So,
but when they meet up before a US national team game,
so that saves you maybe 5-6 hours of flying time to go all the way to the West Coast.
Oh, so you're saying it's central between Europe and the US West Coast,
unless you're going to play on an aircraft carrier in the Atlantic,
Tangier Island.
Yeah, so there's that, but it is a warmer temperature, obviously. So, I mean, you're still going to get the half inch of snow occasionally in January, but that's not quite as bad as elsewhere. So it's a little bit warmer. And then, obviously, if you're preparing for friendlies in the hotter months, in hotter climates, I think Atlanta gets you closer to those areas, so you're a little bit more accustomed to the humidity.
All right. I mean, I would go Richmond, Virginia.
I mean, I'd be fine with that as well. It's very humid here, too. And it's East Coast. Why not?
Just to give us access, right? We'd have all the players come here every time.
That would be... It's like when Grizzle in Parks and Recreation goes to Pawnee, the tiny town. Not that Richmond is tiny, but it would work as well.
It's bigger than Pawnee.
Yeah, why not? Bring it here. We've got stuff. We've got the kickers.
Stuff. Yeah, we're going to let other people work on the marketing slogans for Richmond.
I think
Virginia.
we've got stuff is phenomenal.
We've got stuff, and stuff can be two things.
Yeah, what kind of stuff you want? We got stuff.
We got it.
And again, to go with the Parks and Rec quote, Ron Swanson's favorite store. Food and stuff. There you go. If it's good enough for Swanson, it's good enough for me.
The other thing we rediscovered doing a bit of research about this is there is a national coaching and player development centre being built attached to Sporting KC. It's a weird joint US Soccer Sporting KC project, and it's happening right now. It's going to open in December, I believe.
Yeah, and it's a little confusing because it sounds like it's being billed as the place where people will develop their coaching abilities. It will be it has a dedicated wired training center for coaches. I don't fully understand what that means. It's a bunch of different classrooms.
There's Wi-Fi?
No, I think it's something. I don't. It sounded very like I don't know. You're plugged into computers. Very Matrix is what it sounded like to me. But it sounds like that is maybe geared more towards coaching and developing coaches.
So, but it does have player development.
It also says it will allow for national teams to come and visit. So it also seems like maybe there'll be some playing and training.
Is that more about tempting the US national team to play more of their games at Sporting KC?
I think that's a decent shout. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so it does seem strange that if you're building this one facility that you wouldn't maybe pair it and build another one there, but maybe you want to spread it out a little bit. Who knows?
Okay.
This is why I probably won't be getting that phone call from Sunil Gulati.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. All right, we've got some listener questions to get to.
We do.
First, I want to let you know about Total Soccer Show t-shirts and Total Soccer Show scarves.
Let them know, Dale Grove.
If you would like to buy a Total Soccer Show t-shirt via the fine people at Who Are You Designs, or a TSS scarf via Roughneck Scarves, you can find links to both of those wonderful pieces of apparel at totalsoccershow.com/shop. Sartorial sustenance for the soul.
Sure.
We'll let other people work on the taglines for our clothes.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're both over in terms of coming up with good branding slogans here.
So the link will be in the show notes, totalsoccershow.com/shop.
Sounds good.
Where's the link going to be?
Well, it's going to be on the website, and I will also put it in the show notes.
Yay.
Since I am editing today.
All right, we've got 3 listener questions, which we have handpicked. We're very excited to talk about. First one from David Powell. David Powell wants to know, how do you watch soccer with a tactical eye? I played growing up and with a club team in college, so I have the basics down. However, I struggle to diagnose the specifics of what is working, what isn't, and why. Do you have any tips on how to watch smarter so I can pick up on the finer points of the game? First of all, I'm assuming David is asking us this because we do these in-depth tactical reviews.
So.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. As opposed to what?
I'm not sure.
I mean, yeah, I would assume that's the case. And I would say that a big part of that, and part of why we are able to do that, number one, quickly, but number two, with kind of a lot of efficiency and in-depth research, is because we watch games in studio together. And that's pretty much it. We don't
watch at bars, or
generally we don't. We don't go to bars. We don't watch it with a bunch of people, and that is intentional because as much fun as it is to be social and have a few drinks, number one, that doesn't really lend itself to actually paying attention to the game. But number two, you're surrounded by people, and I do think that there's an element of
no distractions.
Yeah, but even if you're watching with 1 or 2 other people, and say you're watching, since Man United are playing today, if you're watching Manchester United and one of the people in the room hates Paul Pogba, you're going to hear about it, and that's going to influence, like, oh, look at him, he missed that pass, and oh, he missed that pass. And he might have missed 3 bad passes in a game, but made 40 other really good ones, but you will probably only notice the 3 bad ones.
Yeah. Okay, so this leads to one piece of advice I've got. I guess we'll just trade, like, piece of advice to give, right? Watch what you think are the boring parts.
Yeah.
Because that's when stuff is actually happening, right? If you only look up when there's like an attack happening, you've missed everything that happened before. Yep. So watch the boring parts. Because, for example, if it's just like one team is passing the ball around the back, it's not because they're not interested in going forward. The other team is probably doing something to prevent them going forward, right? It could be like a Monaco thing where they block off your centre-backs and your full-backs and your midfielders, and you've got no options.
Yes.
Right?
I will add to yours. We'll just keep adding on to each other.
It's good.
And it's kind of a view behind the curtain because you said if you look up when it gets exciting. And that does lend itself to, I will freely admit, the way I used to watch soccer was sort of like, oh, I'm checking Twitter, oh, I'm doing this, oh, I'm seeing what's going on here, but like passively watching, right?
Yeah.
And we had conversations when we first started really in-depth reviewing games together about how, like, yeah, that's not really watching because you're not really paying attention to the overall patterns. And you might see, I mean, that's why even when you and I review games and we're only looking at like the 2 goals that happen in that game, we don't watch the 10 seconds before, we watch the 5 minutes before, the 10 minutes before to see what the patterns are leading to that goal. And that's a big part of it, is like it can be a little bit dull, but that's where you start to pick up those like tendencies and trends that are happening in the game.
Okay, so let's get to the core of David's question then. Yeah. How do you spot those patterns?
Sure. So I
know it's a hard question. You seem confident, actually. All right,
let's go. I mean, I think the way that I tend to do it is, I think you can get lost really easily trying to pick out formations. So I think if you're just trying to focus on, like, are they actually playing a 4-2-3-1 or is it a 4-3-3, it can be a little bit misleading.
Yeah, maybe accept that nothing's as rigid as it looks on paper. Like when you see a lineup and you see them all in a block, don't expect them to move in that block, and then don't get caught up in that.
Yeah, and especially
like we talked about a Spurs-Arsenal game where Spurs played 4-2-3-1 and 3-4-2-1 in the same game. They just moved it back and forth. So you can spend the whole game wondering which one it is, and the answer was both. Yeah. And you've wasted your time.
And this is where I will say, though, that if you have another friend who is as interested in watching a game and learning the tactics, that's where that is helpful. Because there will be those times when I'll be like, look, they are in a back 3 because this guy's all of a sudden forward. And then Daryl will be like, no, I think he's just drifted forward because of this one situation, or he was up for the corner, but now he's coming back. And so, like, it helps to have that sort of like, let me see what happens over these next 5 minutes to figure out if that's actually the case or if it's just a situation.
So that's actually one thing I'd say. It's about asking questions, right? You ask, why is this happening? Like, you basically notice a thing, which is like, okay, they can't get the ball forward and they can't get it in the box. And then you ask, okay, why could that be? And then you look for the reasons why that could be, right? And if you're watching with a friend who is like-minded and is interested in the same thing. I think that's the ideal thing because you can verbalize the question and the other person might give you a response and then you can like work through it. But it's kind of what we do, right? We work through it between us.
That's a really good point.
If you're on your own, you can still do it though. You can ask yourself the question and then just dedicate yourself to trying to figure out how and why things are happening.
Yeah, and it can be, I think it can also be a progression of questions. So it can start with, say, okay, what are they doing like defensively? What's their back four, back three, whatever? What is that shape? Okay, they're keeping a back four. Now when the defense gets the ball, what are they doing? Are the two center backs slowly passing back and forth? Then you've maybe got the question of, okay, the defense are slowly passing back and forth. The next question is, well, why are they doing that? Is that what they want to be doing, or are they having to do that? And so you can slowly like have a narrative develop.
Where are the fullbacks? Are the fullbacks like pushed up, or are the fullbacks just alongside them?
Yeah, but
are the midfielders coming to show? Is one of them failing to do that?
Yeah, and that kind of lends itself. Eventually, those questions get to like a very specific thing that's not happening or is happening. So it can be like, oh, they're passing back and forth, but they're looking for that midfielder who's supposed to be dropping. Oh, but the other team is marking him every time. So that's what's happening. And that's where you can start to pick up those sort of tendencies that are happening in the game.
Oh, I'm trying to think. When is it recently we noticed that it turned out there was just one guy being constantly man-marked?
I think it was a Monaco game. I think it might have been Monaco Dortmund, maybe. I could be wrong on that one. But it was recently that somebody...
It was Weigl. It was Julian Weigl was being man-marked out of a game.
That was one?
They could not get them. It was Monaco man-marking Julian Weigl so that Dortmund could not build through him. But it took a lot of like cascading questions to get to the thing of why can't they get it out? They normally go through Weigl. Why aren't they? Oh, there's a man glued to him.
I'm also ashamed because I'm a Manchester United fan. It's Ander Herrera.
It's Ander Herrera and
Eden Hazard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
But that's a good one as well. You can watch it. If you watch that game, you could be like, why isn't Eden Hazard having his normal, like really explosive, exciting, good game where he gets the ball all the time and runs at people?
Yeah.
Eventually you'll notice that you can look for Hazard basically, right? He's not going to be on the ball a lot, but you got to figure out why. You got to look away from the ball and see where he is, and then you'll see Ander Herrera next to him.
Yeah. And so like to put my final point on this one, because I think all of that has been good, but my final thing I'll say is like the other reason why I think it's important to stay off of Twitter and to like just kind of like to trust yourself is because I think, at least for me...
Is this like a groupthink thing?
Yeah, it's a little bit of like if somebody starts saying like, oh, they keep doing this, then you're going to look for that to be the case. But I think it's also the thing that I've learned to do in this show. I'm sorry if this is a little bit self-indulgent, listeners, but I've learned to kind of trust myself and to figure out like, oh, I've noticed that happening. Is that continuing to happen? And the best example I have of that recently is Real Madrid versus Atletico Madrid, where I like after 2 or 3 corners, I was like, why does like Marcelo or Modric keep getting the ball every time?
Oh, we figured out they were all in the box.
Yeah. And so like kind of trust yourself that if a thing strikes you or seems odd, that maybe there's a reason for that, and try to figure out what it is about that seems like, I've seen him get the ball 4 times there. Why does that keep happening?
Yeah.
And again, it's going back to asking
Spot the patterns,
questions.
then ask why they're happening. Okay, 2 final things I want to put on this, and then obviously if you have more to add.
No.
Because I'm kind of enjoying
I've got my
this.
final pen on.
I feel like we're getting to some stuff here.
Yeah.
Have a DVR.
Yep.
It's so helpful to have a DVR because then you can sort of think, why is that happening? Like even with the thing you talked about with the Atletico corner kick thing, we went back and rewatched the corner kicks to see, oh, they do have everybody in the box and no one ahead of it, and that's why Real Madrid keep getting the ball outside the box, right?
Yeah.
So if you can rewind, it's much, much better. If you can watch the game knowing the result, weirdly, that's also really
100%
helpful.
agree.
Because you know the narrative, right? You know the story, you know how it ends. Then you can start asking, why and how did the story end that way?
That was
rather
really
than
hard
being
for me.
caught up in the drama.
Yeah. By the way, that was something I really didn't like doing. I think again that was your influence. That I used to hate rewatching games
because you wanted the live like adrenaline rush of the unfolding story.
I think so because in my mind it's like, well, I already know what's going to happen. And no, this is the same guy who's watched Always Sunny, like every episode of Always Sunny, probably 20 times, and yet for some reason that wasn't acceptable.
Also, no one watches Always Sunny for the plot.
How dare you? But yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right that when you don't have that immediate pressure of like an emotion behind it, that you're kind of sitting back knowing what's going to happen, you can sort of like not worry about like, oh, is this going to lead to a goal? And more so, you can take your eye off and see what's going on away from the ball. Yes.
Okay. Anything else? I feel like we answered a good chunk of that.
I hope so.
Probably more.
Probably more.
I guess, David, if you have any follow-up questions, email them to to contact@totalsoccershow.com. .com, and we'd be happy to try and help.
Yeah,
all right.
I would say so.
I'll put a question mark on the end of that. I meant it. We'd be happy to try and help.
All right.
Thank you for the excellent question.
Thank you for that, David. Thank you, Court Jacob, for the next question. Court says, should the U.S. men's national team finish fourth I'm sorry, maybe I should hit that emphasis a little bit harder. Should the USMNT finish fourth in CONCACAF qualifying, they would face the dreaded two-legged playoff to qualify for the World Cup. In your opinion, where should the home leg of this playoff occur, and where do you think U.S. Soccer would host the match if it were to occur?
Ooh, okay. So this is really about choosing your strongest home venue for playing what it would be an Asian team, right? In the Federation playoff. We're going to try not to finish fourth, but if it does. So where do we have the best chance of winning? The thing that comes to mind immediately for me is Columbus, because it seems to be where US Soccer always goes. But I think, we kind of discussed this off air, right? You pointed out the reason they do Columbus is because there's not a big Mexican-American population. And if you're a traveling Mexican fan, it's kind of hard. It's harder to get all the way up to the Midwest than just over the border to Arizona, for example. So maybe that's more specific to the Mexico games than it would be to playing against, Australia. So maybe Columbus is not necessarily the best. It's also not the biggest. Right? If you want a big rowdy atmosphere and you want like 60,000 people or something, Columbus Stadium doesn't hold that.
And that's
Map Frey Stadium.
But I would say, and I really do not mean any disrespect to American supporters. I am a member of the American Outlaws, so I love our supporters, but I do have some questions about like how intimidating of an atmosphere playing in the United States ever really is, because most of the stadiums that you're going to be playing in are state-of-the-art football stadiums that are enormous if you are playing in a huge game like that. And they don't have that sort of claustrophobic atmosphere where you're right on top of the away team. You don't have the kind of what some Central American teams do where they put their most vocal supporters directly above the locker room, so you're shaking the ceiling. So I think for me, atmosphere isn't as important because you're going to get a big turnout no matter what, and it's going to be a loud crowd. But I don't
for World Cup playoff, there's definitely a huge turnout. We're taking that as like a guaranteed 100%. We could fill anywhere.
And so, absolutely. And so that's what I mean, is like anywhere is going to be full and loud, but I don't think that like any one place is terrifying to an opponent. And so I think what's the most important in my mind is where are the players the most comfortable?
So you're saying forget terrifying the opponent, focus on making our players the most comfortable they can be. Okay, so how do you do that then?
I think you look, first of all, if you did have like a national facility where they always go, then they probably always go there, and that would help.
Okay.
But I would say it's maybe, like say most of the players are used to, I mean, you could do a poll, and you could ask every player who's in the 23-player squad, where's your favorite place to play? And if they all say Columbus, then you say, all right, we're going to Columbus.
Right, okay. Yeah, because then maybe, even if it necessarily doesn't make sense in the same way that it does for playing Mexico, it could be that they have good memories of playing there. Right? Rafa Marquez may have ruined that in November, but...
I mean, and so I would say at the very basic level, it has to be a place where the United States has played before and played well before. Because you don't want it to be, like the accommodations in X city are really comfortable, but also we lost 3-0 there. Or it was a really bad hotel. I don't really want to go to that city again.
Wouldn't every player just vote for their home MLS stadium where they play week in, week out? Like, for example, Josie Alto and Michael Bradley might vote for BMO Field in Toronto. Yeah, but we'd end up playing in Canada.
That's where you just go like elementary school style, and you can't vote for your own project. That's how it works.
You at least can't vote for Canadian Stadium.
Yeah, well, that definitely can. It definitely isn't allowed. Oh, that would be kind of awesome. So I think that's what it is. It's where are the players the most comfortable on and off the field? That is the place that you'd want to play in a high pressure situation.
I'm just thinking, just roughly over like your average US national team roster, which club is the most represented, and therefore where would get the most votes if you could vote for your own stadium?
Germany. I would say probably my most likely candidates would be maybe the Rose Bowl or Columbus. Those would be probably the two.
Okay. A couple of ideas I have. Okay, so we're going to sort of discount Columbus for now just because it's always been Columbus, it seems. Like maybe we'll come up with some fresh ideas.
I mean, I just said mine's going to be Columbus, but sure. We can
I'm saying
Columbus.
let's not settle on that because it's what always happens. Your other one was the Rose Bowl, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay, so there's like two different sizes and two different ends of the country. How about a new stadium like Orlando?
Yeah.
Orlando City Stadium. It's nice and steep. It's nice and purple. It's nice and fresh.
Yeah.
It's got that new paint smell.
Having said like previously that maybe it could be like Mapfre Stadium, the issue there is always going to be numbers. And I know that, as I just said, maybe it's not so important to get like 60,000 rabid fans in there, but I don't know if Orlando's is what, like 30, maybe a little bit under?
25,000.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So, I don't know if that would be enough for U.S. soccer, both in terms of making sure you've got like a really loud, raucous atmosphere, and also, they're going to want to make some money off of it.
Okay, yeah, this is the thing, right? Are we better off like filling out a massive stadium and maybe having the US players get excited about that? Or are we better off having a more intimate soccer-specific stadium?
I mean, the answer is obviously, in my opinion, you're better off having an intimate venue where the players feel comfortable. That's what I was saying before. And I think that's what U.S. Soccer would lean towards. Yeah. But if it were a fourth, like that playoff for a World Cup spot, it would probably...
It's bigger, right? This is bigger than like a World Cup qualifier against... I don't know, Costa Rica.
It would be bigger than the CONCACAF Cup against Mexico. It would be like the biggest non-World Cup game I think the United States could play. Maybe the Copa America Centenario final if they had made it or something like that. But really, it is like so important that I think there would have to be an element of like, we want to get on a huge spectacle, huge stage.
But you also want to get to the World Cup.
There's also that.
That's worth way, way more in the long term. Yeah. Right? And there's definitely a fear of missing out. Yeah. FOMO, World Cup FOMO you could have.
So, but I think if you're going to go with the smaller stadium, I think Matt Free, I think Orlando City Stadium, I think even the Cauldron in Kansas. Yeah. Which is not the name of the stadium, I'm aware, but you know I'm getting at.
Or the good old StubHub, tried and true. We mentioned it at the top of the show.
Well, the issue with StubHub, as Grant Wall points out in his article about like the new U.S. soccer facility, is that the Chargers are going to be playing there.
I see.
So then you might have issues of like field availability, or even if the Chargers have some sort of like right of first refusal on who can play there or train there, so that might be an issue.
I've got it. Yankee Stadium. It looks great.
Funny jokes.
It looks great.
Funny jokes from Joe Grove.
Okay, so I think I'm leaning towards Orlando. You're saying either Columbus or the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
Okay. The other part of Court's question was, what do you think US soccer will do? What do you actually think they would prefer?
I honestly think that's part of the reason why I said the Rose Bowl is because I think the United States Soccer Federation would want a big venue. And I think they kind of lean towards the West Coast. I'm really not sure why, but they tend to. Maybe it's because you could do it at like 7 o'clock there. People on the East Coast will still be able to watch it. Versus like if you do it here, maybe 4 p.m., they're not going to be watching it on the East Coast.
True, yeah, it's more national. Yeah.
So I'm going to say either the Rose Bowl or maybe, I think it's Levi's Stadium is where the 49ers play. That seems to be another venue that U.S. Soccer likes. Like they're going to be having Gold Cup games there as well, maybe the Gold Cup final.
I think I've realised what the problem is. All right, the soccer-specific stadiums we talk about, say Orlando, Columbus, the capacity is like 25,000 or so, right? Which is like good soccer size, but not good international soccer size. If we hosted the World Cup, they kind of wouldn't be big enough, right? But then the next step up is like these big NFL stadiums. Like I know the Rose Bowl's not an NFL stadium, but it's been a football stadium at some point. The MetLife Stadium or the Meadowlands or whatever it's called out in New Jersey, they're all massive. They're like 80,000 to 100,000, right? And what we actually need is like a 45,000 seat stadium.
That definitely exists.
A nice mid-level stadium. Yeah.
I'm not sure where, but that definitely exists.
All right, maybe tweet your best suggestions for where the US should host a World Cup playoff game. Circa 50,000.
All right,
Yeah, tweet them to @TotalSoccerShow with hashtag World Cup playoff.
Sure.
Yeah.
That could be a terrifying hashtag if people don't know what's going on, but yeah, why not? Hopefully we've got that one. Final question, Mr. Grove?
Yeah, final question comes from Joey Jadlowski. Joey wants to know, with the recent comments from Arsene Wenger and Pep Guardiola that finishing in the top 4 in the Premier League is like winning a trophy, I want to ask you something in this vein. Joey asks, what would you rather have, a third-place finish in the Premier League or a Europa League title? And the reason Joey asked third place is because third place guarantees entry to the Champions League group stage. Winning the Europa League also guarantees Champions League. But in one, you like finish third in the league and it's good. The other one, you get an actual bona fide silverware trophy to lift above your head and go,
And since I know the way Daryl Grove thinks,
I think I gave my opinion away just
what are you going to say?
I go Europa League trophy. I want to hold a trophy above my head.
Agreed.
I want my team to.
I wanted you to answer first because I feel like the way Daryl Grove likes to work is he asks me and then he keeps asking me questions to make it more and more difficult. Like, but what if your team gets relegated? What if your team ceases to exist after they win the Europa League?
Let's try this without any external context, right?
Sure.
It's just which one would you prefer? These two things exist in a vacuum. Would you rather say, okay, my team finished third place? Would you say my team won a Europa League trophy?
I think I would rather say my team won the Europa League trophy.
Because just because it's a trophy?
I mean, first of all, obviously the fact that it means you qualify for the Champions League, that's a huge thing. It didn't used to mean that, lest we forget. I think that's a big thing.
Then it's a big and much tougher conversation that probably ends with both of us saying third place. Because long-term qualifying Champions League's more important.
And I think even if Wenger and Guardiola want to say that third place is the trophy, it's not. It's third place in the league. And I understand what that means, means you're automatically in the Champions League. You don't have to do the playoff, which you would have to do if you were in fourth.
Yeah.
but it's still not the same thing as winning a trophy. I think the interesting thing here, maybe not for Joey, but I think for a lot of people who, if you have kind of chosen a team, because most Americans were not born in London or Manchester or Liverpool, I think a lot of people root for the bigger clubs here, and with that comes this stigma of, it's the Europa League, it's not that good. Whereas, like, we have a friend, Eric, who's a Blackburn fan.
Yeah.
If Blackburn won the Europa League, he'd be pretty pumped. If Wolves won the Europa League, you'd be pretty pumped.
If they qualify for the Europa League, I'd be over the moon.
Yeah, exactly. To the extent that I asked you, like, if Wolves won the Europa League but got relegated, and you were sort of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's tough, right?
Yeah, because I'm of that mind. Like, I love to win trophies, and Wolves are not likely to win a trophy, so it's kind of worth some short-term pain to have a big trophy.
So I would say I think I would always rather have like a physical trophy and a sign that like they've your team has made it through a knockout round tournament and made it through the group stage, and it's been a really challenging season, but they've eventually come away champions, as opposed to they've fought, and they came away third.
Yeah, you can't put that in the trophy cabinet, can you?
You sure can't.
Just put a big number 3 in the trophy cabinet.
Much as Arsene Wenger might like to. No, you cannot. No, you cannot.
I think there's a trophy room at the Emirates with just a lot of like fourth place finishes. It's just like a screenshot,
just bronze medals
of the final table.
It's like when I think there was one year when I was on the swim team, and you get, I think at least the swim team I was on, you would get a ribbon based on whatever place you'd got, and I got a lot of 6th and 8th place medals.
That's nice that you got that.
Yeah. I still can just barely swim. So it's whatever.
All right, so thank you to David, to Court, and to Joey for today's questions. If you've got questions for TSS, you can email contact@totalsoccershow.com. Put question in the title so we can find it. Our inboxes are kind of busy these days. If you're a subscriber to the Total Soccer Show, if you subscribe at the $10 level per month or higher, we guarantee to answer one question per month. If you are a $10 or more subscriber, we have many, many of them. We really do, but not everybody's asking a question. You take advantage of your $10. Like, ask us a question, put $10 a month in the subject line again, so we can separate that out, and we'll know to look for it. Send us your questions, we will answer them.
And at any level of the Scouting Network, or at any level of being a subscriber, it means you get to be a part of the Scouting Network.
Yeah, you do.
We assign you a young and promising player. We've already covered 4 today, since we had 3 U17 reports, but we've got 2 more, Mr. Grove.
Okay, first one we have is from Kat Prickett. She is scouting Tyler Turner, the 21-year-old American defender for LA Galaxy 2. I forgot that he had moved on to Las Stars. He got picked up, right? Okay.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay. Kat says, Tyler had a good start to April, but then things took a turn. He started Las Stars' first 2 matches of the season, but has been getting fewer and fewer minutes of late. He failed to even make the bench in the 1-1 draw with Orange County SC. Kat concludes that the 2 sides are playing again this weekend. She may be in attendance if she can persuade friends to go with her, so hopefully more reports to come. Hopefully he's playing as well if you're going to go.
Yeah. And if not, hopefully she heckles him if he's sitting on the bench. Or maybe he's sitting in the stands. Who knows? Final report of the day comes from Juan Carlos Salas, scouting Mallory Pugh. You might have heard of her. Do you know her, Daryl Grove?
I certainly have. I heard she's turning pro soon.
She is indeed. 19-year-old American attacker 4, ? She and Josh Sargent sort of in the same boat, but not really. Because Mallory Pugh has gone pro, as you said. According to Grant Wall, Mallory Pugh met with Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour, and Wall says whatever deal she eventually signs is certain to be one of the biggest endorsement deals for a U.S. women's player ever. He wrote one of, Juan Carlos suggests, because Alex Morgan's will likely be bigger. Pugh also met with the Washington Spirit, who do not want to let go of her rights.
So they have first pick, right?
Yes. Yeah. And they especially don't want to let her go to Portland, which is where I think Mallory Pugh prefers, because Spirit owner Bill Lynch is reportedly still angry that Portland signed former Washington head coach Mark Parson as their current manager. Not ideal.
Only got yourself to blame, Mr. Lynch.
A little bit. PSG has also made an offer to Pugh, so if the NWSL can't get it together, she may go overseas. But, writes Juan Carlos, I highly doubt that will happen, and so apparently does Grant Wall.
Here's the thing, NWSL season is underway.
Oh boy,
so Mallory Pugh's just burning time here.
Yeah,
right? She should sign and play.
Yeah, I wonder if either maybe she's holding out because she really doesn't want to go to Washington, so she's holding out and trying to force Washington's hand into saying fine, we'll take a first round pick next year. Or
How
something.
long can you wait? The season's going. The season's going.
Yeah, but by the same token, if you're about to sign one of the biggest deals ever in women's soccer history, I think you can kind of afford to hang out for a while.
I've never been in that scenario. Well, we can talk my contract again later.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
With your newfound wealth.
I mean, not that I have. Yeah, exactly.
To be clear, Taylor does not have a secret stash of $100 million, just in case anyone thought we were serious.
I'm not sure Taylor has a secret stash of $100, so yeah.
All right, well, thank you to everybody for the scouting reports and the questions. If you would like to join the TSS Scouting Network, support the show, you can go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. I feel like we should put that link somewhere. Where would you put that link, Taylor?
Probably on the website.
Where else?
No, the show notes.
Yes, Taylor will put that link in today's show notes. Thank you very much. And another reminder that you can buy TSS scarf, TSS t-shirt, totalsoccershow.com/shop. Okay, that is all from us today. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again very soon.